Hey everyone, today I'll teach you how to make things move. For today, it's only going to be an ellipse, but later on you're going to be displaying images that represent ships or characters or enemies or whatever you want, and the way that you move them is going to be the same thing that you learned today. Okay, let's just remember some basics from last time. Ellipse, we'll draw an ellipse. 300, 300 is the x and y coordinates of the center of your ellipse. 100 by 100 is the width and the height of your ellipse. Alright, so let's say we want our ellipse to move. The only way anything ever changes or moves in this program is if these numbers change. These numbers that tell the computer where to draw the circle. So if I wanted it to move up, I would need to change this number, which is saying where's the y coordinate of the center. Okay, so if I need this number 300 to change, I can't just type in 300. Instead, it needs to be a variable. So I'll call my variable y. This is something you'll be doing again with other variables, so it's good to get in the habit of recognizing where things go. I'm going to create a variable called y up here. I'm making it float. If you don't know about float, it's sort of like double, so it's a number that can have decimal places. It's just not quite as precise a number as double is. And this is the data type that processing supports. Processing doesn't support doubles. Okay, so I've got a y coordinate. Inside setup, I need to tell it where is that y coordinate going to start, because that's the job of setup, is to give your variables initial values. And now inside ellipse, I'm saying draw the ellipse at a coordinate y. Okay, when I run it, still nothing happens, because I actually didn't tell the number inside this variable to change. Draw is looping 30 times a second, so anything I put inside this block of code here is going to be running 30 times a second. So I might say y equals y plus 1, for example, and that's saying take the current value of y and add 1 to it, and now save that back inside y. And then the next time we go through the draw loop, when I draw at y, the number is going to be 1 larger because I add 1 here. And then I'm going to add 1 again and again and again. Here's what that's going to look like if my y coordinate is 300 and my x coordinate is 300. Over time, I'm going to add 1 pixel at a time, and each time I add a pixel to the y coordinate and I redraw my ellipse, it's going to move down by a little bit. So it's sort of like those flip books that you might have made in elementary school. Let's look at it. If I run it, indeed we see it moving downwards very slowly. If you're following along with me, you might have noticed that I have this statement background, which isn't in yours. Let's take it out and see what happens. If I don't have background, you see it's kind of leaving a trail behind. This is the trail of all the old ellipses that it's already drawn. So if you want to see, let's actually make it jump by 10 pixels every time. And now you can see it moving faster, and it's more clear that it's the old ellipses that you're seeing. So what background does is background wipes the entire screen with a single color so that way you're not seeing all of the old drawings that you've made. Alright, so now we've made it move at least down, and we know that this number controls how fast it moves. If this is 10, it means I'm adding 10 pixels every time. If it's 100, it means I'm adding 100 pixels every time, so it would go off the screen very quickly. If I made it negative, like let's say make it -3 for example, I'm subtracting 3 from the y coordinate every time, so we should see it move up. And in fact we do. Pause the video and go ahead now and make all the changes you need to make so that the ellipse will also move slowly to the right at the same time. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, I'm going to give you my solution. So I make an x variable. I'm going to say x starts at 300. My ellipse is going to draw centered at the x coordinate. And then I'm going to say x equals x plus 1 maybe is going to make it very slowly add 1 to x, which would make it move right. So there we go. I'm going up pretty quick and moving right very slowly. Let's make it screen wrap. So in other words, when you hit the top of the screen, we want it to disappear and then reappear at the bottom of the screen like it's wrapped around. So in order to do that, we need to make a test that says something like this. In pseudocode, I'd say if the circle hit the top of the screen, then I want to say something like move it to the bottom of the screen. Wow, I really can't type today. Move it to the bottom of the screen. Okay, well, how's this going to work? Everything we write has to be about the numbers inside variables. So if I want to know if the circles hit the top of the screen, it can't be about the x variable, it should be about the y variable. So I need to rewrite this having something to do with y. Okay, so if it's hit the top of the screen. This is going to be almost right, but not quite. The top of the screen is a coordinate of 0, so you might say if y equals 0. That's sort of like a reasonable guess if the y coordinate of the circle is at the top of the screen. Okay, move it to the bottom. How do we do that? Well, we'll just tell the y to change what its value is. We'll say set y equal to 600 is the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and try that. Whoa. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. So it does seem to have worked, at least for this particular kind of motion it did. But there's a couple of things that are a little bit broken about this. Let's change it so it's moving a little bit faster. Let's make it move at a speed of 16 maybe. And then let's run it again. Well, you saw it move a lot faster, and you also saw that it just disappeared off the top of the screen and it didn't actually reappear on the bottom. So let's think about what's happening for a minute. It might help to watch it happen more slowly. So up here in setup, you can do this. Frame rate is 2, so this will run at 2 frames a second. And then let's run it again and watch it. So you see that every frame, it doesn't move smoothly. Instead, it's really actually jumping by 16 pixels. And that was the key moment when it should have disappeared and reappeared and nothing happened. And here's what's going on. If you remember, we're moving the y-coordinate by 16 pixels every time. We only do the screen wrap if the y-coordinate is exactly equal to 0. So what's happening is we're drawing an ellipse where the y-coordinate is a little bit above the top of the, a little bit below the top of the screen. So like maybe at a coordinate of, I don't know, 6 or something. And then in the next frame, we subtract 16 from that. So in one frame, we draw it here. In the very next frame, we draw it up here at negative 16. Notice it jumped over y equals 0. First y was 6, then y was negative 16. And so it missed this if statement because the computer isn't smart enough to figure out that what you want to say is look at all the values in between. It's literally doing exactly what you're telling it to. It's saying, is the y variable right now exactly equal to 0? So the solution to this problem is to say if the y value is less than or equal to 0. Because now if it jumps over the top of the screen, the y-coordinate will be less than 0 because it'll be negative 16, and the if statement will catch it and it will go ahead and jump it back onto the screen there. So let's give it a try. So I'll say if y is less than or equal to 0, and let's keep the frame rate slow so we can watch it happen. So again, we're watching it step by step, and watch the center. You'll see the center be right here, and then the very next frame it'll move. There we go. Watching it this slowly has maybe made you notice something else that's not quite right. We actually don't want it to screen wrap when the halfway point is off the screen. We'd kind of like the entire circle to be off the screen before we had it teleport itself to the bottom there. That's something that I'm going to have you guys do in the exercises, and I'll have a particularly tricky thing for you to think about having to do with that. For the moment, let's go ahead and add some more if statements that will make it wrap off the right-hand side of the screen, or the left, or the bottom. So I'm already saying if y is less than or equal to 0, set it to be 600. Let's do this. Let's say if y is greater than 600, that must mean I'm off the bottom of the screen. So I'll set y to be equal to, let's set it to be equal to 1, which is the top of the screen. If it's confusing to you to see this and remember what it all means, you can add comments. You can say, if off the top, move to bottom. And then here you'd say abort if off the bottom, move to top. And then we'd have the same thing for x. So go ahead and pause the video and write the same things for the x coordinates. I'm assuming you've paused the video. So let's see, this is if I'm off the right-hand side of the screen, I'll set it back to the left-hand side. And if I'm off the left-hand side, I'll set it back to the right-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to change my x speed so it's a little bit faster. And I'm going to set my frame rate. I'm going to delete the frame rate thing. And let's see if the screen wrap is working. Great, so now we see it wrap off the right-hand side of the screen also. If we really want to test this well, we should test to see does it screen wrap when it hits the bottom and the left-hand side. So let's reverse the y speed and also the x speed. So now I'll subtract 3, so I'll be going left. And I'll add 16, so I'll be going down. Great, so it's also worked in that direction. You should also test yours to make sure yours works in that direction. If for some reason yours doesn't work, do the exercises anyway, and I'll probably help you along the way, and you'll see what your own problem is. Okay, good luck.